Well, hello there, I'm D3. There's one thing I love above all, and that is putting my imagination to work. I'm a storyteller at heart, and I love writing and drawing about it. Why? Because it's fun to leave clues pertaining to a bigger picture, something that prompts your imagination in turn and makes you want to know more. The easiest way to tell the story in a drawing is through omission. Draw something wacky without giving it a cause, and people start to wonder why it's like this. It's fun, it always works, boom, that's storytelling, baby. That's my reasoning, and the reason I love to draw weird things. It's also my excuse as to why I haven't properly attempted making a portrait in years. I think the last time was a half-assed attempt with this woman with a hat. But I clearly remember making that video about one day before it came out, simply because I had a video to put out, hence the half-assedness. Giving it my all to actually draw a portrait, with reference and all, photorealism and all that jazz, it's been a while. Drawing weird things, if you mess up, it's fine, it gives it character. Photorealism, if you mess up, you're just not great at it. So how would I fare? Well, it's time to find out. Across 3 attempts at painting a proper portrait digitally, we'll go over the technique, process, tools, and finally the skills and the things to keep in mind during this exercise. Let us start by commenting the footage I've been showing since the start. This is British rapper extraordinaire Little Simz in a crisp high-res picture that I've turned black and white, and I am attempting to replicate live on Twitch. Twitch.tv/D3, by the way. My attempt at drawing her was basically my baseline. If I go straight into attempting a proper portrait with no research or exercise, this is how I do. First obvious thing to note, facial ratios are completely off. Even in the sketching phase, it didn't look like my reference model at all. Basically, my sketch is wonky. But as I said, this is the baseline attempt, so I kept pushing. Once the sketch is done, we can draw in the flats, matching the grayscale value as best as we can. And then it's a simple case of going over the whole thing, fixing values as I go. More reflections and highlights on the forehead, pick a lighter gray and add it in. Darker occlusion shadows in the nostrils, pick a darker gray and add it in. At this point, I'm doing it on a layer above the sketch, because you eventually want to fade the sketch out, as in reality there are no lines defining the features on a face. The only rule in this whole process to be more efficient at this point is to keep it zoomed out to force yourself not to go into details and to keep an objective point of view. Start big and refine later. It just makes sense. It's much harder to fix the overall grayscale gradient of a whole face after you've refined every highlight, for example. As far as my portrait of Little Simz goes, I tweaked it a little bit with some liquify tool and got it to match the reference as best as I could. In the end, she doesn't really look like Little Simz, which is why I eventually stopped, before painting the hair, for example. You can polish a turd a million times, it becomes shiny, but it's still a turd. And I really wanted to take everything I learned and add it to my next attempt. And so to finish with this baseline drawing, I was quite happy with it overall, maybe a 6 out of 10. She looks human, and it is a portrait that could kinda pass as a photograph if you squint your eyes and look from far away. Like, the person I represented is not the person in my reference though, so I lost a couple points there. I like the process of blending the values, and I honestly surprised myself at how good I was at matching values, which is something I rarely attempted before. So overall, I think it's good painting, even if it's not Little Simz. Moving on to example 2, also made live on Twitch, still twitch.tv/D3. Surely, you have recognized my new reference being the American actress Zendaya. To fix my issues with proportions from the previous portrait attempt, this time I opted for the grid method, which is a good way to replicate a composition and is the easiest thing without tracing over the lines, which we can all agree is cheating. The grid method implies a grid, that you put over your reference and your empty canvas. To make it easier, I chose my canvas size to be the same size as the reference. And now we just need to have a grid that has to be the same ratio and the same size for both the reference and the canvas. Then it's simply a case of filling the squares of the grid one by one. instead of doing the whole picture, trying to figure out where any line goes in the immensity of an empty canvas, you mentally cut your canvas into a lot of tiny ones that are way easier to reproduce. Like how the line for the jaw might go from a corner of a square into right next to the opposite corner. That's easy to replicate. And already, just a couple minutes into the sketch, it was recognizable and evident that I was painting Zendaya, or at least her twin sister. That is step 1, and for step 2, it's rinse and repeat of the previous attempt, adding values and blending them until it's as close to the reference as I'm willing to get, keeping in mind that this is still somewhat of a practice, or exercise for me. And so, while I do that, let's talk black and white for a second. Why am I painting in black and white when the reference pictures are in colors? 2 reasons. First reason is that colors are hard. Colors are made from hue, saturation, and value, and dealing with all 3 at the same time is really difficult. To do so, you have to deconstruct all the complicated things your brain does when your eye sees stuff. For example, in a certain light environment, like low light or colored light, if you see somebody with, say, a red shirt, your brain would know it's red from context. But if you take a picture of the shirt and then look at the color of a pixel, that pixel might be gray, or purple, or even blue. That's the optical illusion of it, and this is why coloring is such a hard thing. So with grayscale, you get to basically completely ignore hue and saturation and focus on value. You can always color later if you have the right technique and tools. Which brings me to the second reason I paint in black and white, which has to do with the tools I'm using. I'm not gonna go into too much detail because I myself am pretty new with these tools, so I'm gonna refer you to the videos by Peter Morbacher. I am, after all, using their tools and their techniques. Yes, this whole thing of drawing portraits is basically just another study of my favorite internet artist of the past couple years. And so I am painting in black and white because that's what they do, and I'm slowly learning how to color using gradient maps, which I find pretty difficult when it comes to reproducing color. So yeah, this is why I chose to follow this process of painting. As for the tools, I'm only using 2. The first is a HB mechanical pencil I found for free on the Clip Studio online store. Nothing much to say about it, it does what it says on the label. It's a pencil brush. The second tool I'm using is All Huckleberry from Peter Morbacher's free pack of tools. Again, go check them out, it's way worth it. I've never seen or used a brush like All Huckleberry before, and while it took me a while to get used to it, it gets really addictive to use. Basically, it's a round brush with fixed opacity. When you press lightly, the brush is small with hard and well-defined edges, and the harder you press, the larger the brush and the softer and more feathery the edge. So you can do precise tiny things with the light stroke, and you can blend large areas with a lot of pressure, or do the in-between and go from one to the other. It's weird to understand, and it's much better when you try it yourself, and honestly, I love this brush. Anyway, back to the drawing of Zendaya, which is now basically done. Again, I didn't want to bother painting the hair, or the neck for that matters. I do like the feel of a half-sketchy painting with more details in the center and rough sketching at the edges, but it's mostly based on vibes. For some reason, I didn't feel like this drawing was the one. This was not the attempt at painting a portrait giving it my all. Maybe it's because I was live on Twitch and so I didn't take the time to do it properly. Anyway, overall, Zendaya gets a 7.5 out of 10 for me. The painting is recognizable, it's dynamic, it was fun while it lasted, and I even used a couple gradient maps to give it the vibe of an old political poster or something. I like it. I feel like now I can say with confidence that I can paint portraits, even if I'm new at it. But now let's go to our final boss, the real test. The real attempt at painting an honest portrait digitally. And who better to model for me than Lucy Liu? Especially Lucy Liu as Oranishi from my favorite movie, Kill Bill. And with a new cup of coffee in hand, there we go. Let's start. I chose to do this painting offline, so I could take my time instead of on stream, which is twitch.tv/Detroit by the way. It's always like this. You think you're done with your 1 hour long drawing session and you're going to do something else like fixing lunch, and suddenly you spot a tiny fixable mistake. So you fix it, and then you spot another one, and so on. In any case, I definitely gave this painting attempt my whole. Now, If I had to be honest, it was probably not my whole haul, since I only spent like 3 hours on it. I could have spent 30, but I honestly don't know how I could have improved the grayscale painting. And for the coloring, I basically got lost and didn't know what to do when I reached this point. So maybe coloring and this could be the subject of a new video at some point. But I'm getting too far ahead. For now, simply enjoy this painting process with gentle lo-fi music. I don't have more to say for now, so I'll comment some more near the end. So, given my current skill level when it comes to portraits, I'm quite happy with the level of realism I can achieve, looking at this third portrait. Lucy Liu is easily recognizable and could definitely be a picture from far away. For the colors, weirdly enough, my painting looks much better with wacky colors, as you'll see, rather than with my best attempt at a proper coloring. The reason for that is me being still very new at using gradient maps. So I'll give this painting a 9 out of 10, simply because I feel like I shattered the expectations I had for myself when I started this project of learning portraits. And now, fun fact, you don't have to trust me if you don't want, but I actually managed to reach a 10 out of 10 portrait that I did off camera. I made a self-portrait, because of course any artist will make a self-portrait at some point. I actually drew myself perfectly in grayscale. Like, it's only by zooming in and seeing the brushstrokes, or with the lack of background, that you can see it's not a photograph. And so you won't get to see my face, but here's my hat and my drawing glasses. And with that said, I feel like I can end the video. I tend to be lazy with my art sometimes, moving on when I reach some level of difficulty, or relying too much on my imagination or style. So I was fully expecting a bucket of cold water to be poured on me when I started, but I was actually kinda impressed with myself over the whole experience. And so I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and maybe you can give me tips or share your experience or lack thereof in the comments. Subscribe so you'll see the next wacky doodle I make. Don't forget to do that. I'm DaVinci and I'll see you soon. Bye!